as we jump into this series, so the first question, and the question that we're really going to talk about today, is what do you want? What do you want? When you think about the answers to that question, and we talk about just the actual series itself, what do you want? For some of you, many of you in here, you want the Bills to win today, don't you? That's what I'm talking about, right? And so I will just ask you the same thing that I asked this morning's gathering, is that the same energy and zeal and excitement, not the language now, that you're going to give them Bills today? Because I know y'all going to be excited in front of that TV. I need y'all to be excited today for Jesus. Can we do that? Y'all going to make me run up in here. That's what I'm talking about. Because guess what? I mean, give me 20 minutes, right? 20, 25 minutes. I'm going to have you in and out. And then you can get home to what your chip and dip, your chicken finger, chicken wing dip, your chicken wings, your pizza, your celery. Y'all getting hungry, ain't you? Okay, I'm going to stop. All right, so let's jump in. So back to the question at hand. What do you want? You want something, and depending upon the age and the stage, right, it could be different at each age and stage. So like what you wanted at 16 is probably totally different than 21, 26, 36, right, 56, 78, whatever it is. Like at each individual stage, if I were to ask you, especially those of you who might be, let's just say, over 50 and 60, you've got some time in, right? You put some time in. And so I could ask you, like, if you think back to where you were when you were 16, what you wanted then as opposed to what you want now probably would be different, right? I would agree so. And so today, as we dive into this question of what do you want, it's tricky because, and there are 4 things that we're going to talk about that really make this tricky, and then we're going to come back through the back door of talking about James chapter 4, which is going to help us also dissect this question. But I think the one thing that makes this tricky when we talk about what do you want is the fact that we want our own way, right? Some of y'all like, yup. It's like, it's my way or the highway, right? You want your own way. And so, and for me, in the case of my 6-year-old son, it's all the time, right? And so we kind of go through this battle of letting him know, like, you don't rule me, little person. And he's like, yeah, I do. And so some of you who have children, or you have nieces and nephews, or, you know, it could be, you know, adopted or just your neighbors or whatever, we kind of go through that idea of, you know, like, I want my own way, period. I want my own way. And so we've seen that in an instance specifically with children, right? If you've seen families where, like, you see a child who has gotten its own way, and over the years, once they become a teenager or once they become an adult, there is a struggle there. Right? Y'all are like, mm-hmm. They eventually get in their own way, right? And so when we get our own way, we often get in our own way. And so for them specifically, there's no rules, there's no boundaries, there's no restrictions. And so when they become adults, what ends up happening is they lose their way. And not only do they lose their way, they get in their way because they don't really know, they don't know how to operate. Because like, what you mean I can't have my own way? What you mean you don't answer to my every call? What do you mean? Like, there's an issue there. So when we talk about wanting our own way, when we get our own way, we often get in our own way. And what's interesting about this is not only that do we get in our own way, I'm thinking that there are times where, if you can think of a story where you got what you wanted, but it wasn't really what you wanted. Y'all like, mm-hmm, that was yesterday. Right? You get what you want, but you didn't really get what you wanted, right? And so it's one of those situations where maybe like you thought you wanted the job, or you thought you wanted the promotion, or like you got the girl, you got the guy, and then after you ever get a job and you're so excited about the job, and like after like the first week, you like hated it, right? You're like, who told me that this was a good idea? And so it's kind of like we want our own way, but we can't get our own way. And so it's like this kind of like conundrum of where we can't have our way and have it too. Right? Like you wanted the job, you was excited about the job, you just knew like this was gonna be it. You got the girl, you got the guy, and then all of a sudden you was like hated him, hated her. Right? Where do we walk out of this agreement here? Like this is You're like, you know what? it's not you, it's me. It's just not working out. Some of y'all said that this week. And so when we look at that, we look at the idea of, right, we can't have it our way, but we can have it and have it too, but we want our own way, right? And so then the next thing outside of wanting our own way is we want to do what we want to do. Not only do we want our own way, but we want to do what we want to do. I want to do what I want to do. I want to have my own way. Like, it's like, you know what? That job that I hate, I want to do what I want to do. I ain't going in this week. I got a test this week, but guess what? I don't want to do it. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm not studying. I decided I'm not doing laundry this week. Some of y'all are like, oh, Lord. Because guess what? When we want to do what we want to do, sometimes we may end up in a place that we don't want to be. So I know for a fact that, okay, so you don't want to go to work, you must want to get fired. You didn't want to study for that test, but you wanted to fail. You didn't want to do no laundry. Who didn't do laundry? Or you say, you know what? I'll decide I'm not washing up this week. I don't want to. I'm doing what I want to do. You just don't come to church, okay? And you sit up in that balcony because you need Jesus even if you're funky, right? You could be funky and love Jesus. You just be funky up in that balcony all the way in the back. So we may end up in a place that we don't want to be. And so it's interesting because with this, if you always do what you want to do, you may end up in a place that you don't want to be. And when you think about that, you kind of say, well, I just don't want to. You ever have a conversation with a kid or a student, or maybe it was you, where you're like, do I have to? Some of us as adults like, do I have to go to work this week? Do I have to? And so different things in different scenarios, it's like, no, you don't necessarily have to. You don't have to go to work. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to wash up. You don't have to do laundry. You don't have to. You don't have to follow the law. But then there are things called prison, jail, you're grounded, you're on punishment for the whole year. Things like timeout, for the little people. And so what ends up happening is no, you don't have to, right? And so I can't stop you from want to, but I can keep you from can do. And so you may, let's just say, for example, you may decide that you want to text and drive, but when they take your license, where are you going? You can want to drive all you want, but you can't, right? And so when we talk about what do you want and you say, I want to do what I want to do, well, you go right on ahead, baby. You go. You go and do what you want to do. And when you do what you want to do, you better be ready for can't do. Because at the age of accountability, sometimes we can't stop people from doing things, doing what they want to do, but we can keep them from doing certain things. And so as we move into the next tricky thing, when we talk about what do you want, we want perpetual pleasure. Okay, so I did get a comment. Some of y'all are like, perpetual? I mean, when we talk about pleasure, what do we think about? Thank you. Somebody said it. The first gathering, they was like, I'm not going to be the first one to say it. We think about sex, right? But how do we know that how many of us know that there are other types of pleasures there are, right? We can find pleasure in other things. Like, I love good food. Oh, God, I love food. I just do. Like, I love, if you ask my husband what I really love, I love the sun. I love sand in my toes. I love the beach. I see you, Donna Jean. Let's see, right here, all day, every day. Just make it hot, like 90 degrees all day. But just think, when we talk about perpetual means ongoing, everlasting, eternal, nonstop. I'm sure if I were at the beach, on the beach, all day, every day, I might look a little like this monitor, and I might end up a little wrinkly after some time. And then I might even, long term, have to have an appointment with the doctor because there might be something wrong with my skin, right? And so when we look at pleasure and we look at things that bring us pleasure, even let's just say we talk about sex, right? Just think about perpetual sex. Y'all are so funny. The men are like, bring it on. You're like, you hear that, wifey? She's talking about perpetual. Now, you thinking perpetual, but let me just tell you exactly what perpetual is. Perpetual is like the Energizer bunny that keeps going and 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 going. And I know some of y'all are like, wait a minute now, we didn't agree to that. I need a break. I need to go get me, some water. I need to, but perpetual is we want it all the time. And so when we're talking about, it sounds good to say perpetual. I want perpetual this, or I want perpetual pleasure. I want to feel good all the time. At the end of the day, you don't really know what you're asking for because pleasure is addictive, which undermines the pleasure, which isn't what we want. We want to feel good. We don't want to come out on the other end of passed out. I mean, real talk. Like for me, if I don't necessarily want to come out with skin cancer, I just want to lay in the sun. Right? It's kind of like my son who, every now and then he'll say, Mommy, can I have candy for breakfast? And I say, sure. Don't judge me. And some of it is just because I'm not fighting with him today. And then other times I'm like, okay, go ahead and eat the candy. And then he's like, Mom, my stomach hurts. And I'm like, I told you not to eat the candy. You should have had that sausage and the French toast. Some juice. But just imagine those of you who love sweets. You love donuts. You love cakes. Eating cake every day, all day. Perpetual cake. It sounds funny, but like, when we say we want what we want, what do you want? I want perpetual pleasure. I want it, oh, God, I could just, that red velvet cake. God, I just got excited, y'all. But I'm not eating no red velvet cake every day, all day, every day, all day, all day, every day, because then what? It undermines the pleasure because now I hate red velvet cake because I've had it way too much. And so in a situation like that, when we talk about pleasure being addictive, there's a story that I just learned about, and I'm reminded of a young man who is actually currently in a coma because he overdosed on drugs. And what ended up happening is he was taking a specific drug, Xanax, for pleasure, right, to feel a certain kind of way. And what ended up happening is he bought a substitute from somebody else, and the substitute was probably laced with something that he didn't know, but he was looking for what? Perpetual pleasure. And it went from good to bad to worse, and now he's in a coma. And so how many of us, maybe our story is not as drastic as that, but you can think back to a place where what you wanted, and you wanted it bad enough to get it, which I'm going to transition into the next one, which is we want it now. You wanted it now. You wanted it bad enough. You couldn't wait. And so you actually took the substitute, as opposed to the real thing, which you weren't really supposed to be taking the real thing either, but you couldn't wait. And so now we've got the result of what? The perpetual pleasure, getting what we want, but not really what we wanted, because we wanted it and we could have it, but we can't have it too. And so when we say we want it now, all of us will say, it's kind of like the commercials, like, give me my money and I want it now. That commercial, right? We want it now. We have the little kids who have the temper tantrums. I want my thing now. Like, yo, okay, stomp at me again. You give them that look, and they keep stomping. Oh, I tell you, my life is a reality show, y'all. But at the end of the day, when we talk about wanting it now, it's kind of like, I had to have it now. I had to have him now. I had to have her now. Right? I had to have it now. And so what ends up happening is what we want now isn't always what we want later. right? What we want now isn't always what we want later. And so we get to a place of, thinking like, wow, like I just had to have that car, or I just had to buy this, or I had to get that, or I just had to have it. And then when you think about like this young man, I just had to have that next fix. I just had to have it. And so then when we go from we want it now, it goes to I regret wanting it. Because regret begins with I want. We don't initially set out to say like, I want some perpetual cookies. Somebody said, y'all are just, I want perpetual pizza and wings. You're going to have some later on, some of y'all. But you get to a point where I want perpetual whatever. I want it now. And then after the fact, like everyone have a saying that says like your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Did your parents ever tell you that? My mom used to tell me that all the time. Just, it don't make no sense. Get all that food, eyes bigger than your stomach. You going to eat that food. And you get the food and you just can't. It looked good. You was going to tear that food up. And then you like, I regret that I wanted that food because now I'm feeling some kind of way. I regret ends with I want to go back in time and not get what I wanted. We don't necessarily say I regret going into it, but at the end of the day, we regret it. And so as we're talking about these things here, we're going to transition into a couple of things that I think are going to be important to us as we talk about James chapter 4. And so, when you think about the question, what do you want? I really want you to take a couple of seconds and just think about what do you want? Because you have to be careful for what you want for. You got to be careful. We say, oh, I want this, and oh, I want that, and we're really not sure of what we want. And so let me do a really quick review of what we've just talked about, and then we're going to transition into the scripture, and we're going to dissect this a little bit more, okay? And so the first one is if we always get our way, we lose our way. If we always do what we want to do, we end up where we don't want to be. If we get what we want now, we may not get what we want later. Every want is tied to an appetite, and appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. Getting what we want usually leaves us wanting more. Again, I want it now. I want perpetual pleasure. I want it all the time. And because I want it all the time, I got to keep having it. And because I got to keep having it, I got to try to keep having it. And because I'm keep having it, at some point in time, I don't want it anymore, but I can't stop. And so let's kind of go to James chapter 4. We're going to read through verses 1 through 3, and then I'm going to come back and dissect it. Because I think you get the full context of what I'm trying to say in the full reading of it as opposed to me breaking it down, and then I'll come back and break it down. So if you have your phones, your Bibles, if you want to write this down, we're in James chapter 4, verse 1 through 3, and we're going to read starting now. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have what you want because you do not ask God. And when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. So let's just talk a little bit and dissect this for a minute. So when we talk a little bit about this the first verse, it says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires and desires that battle within you? The interesting thing about that is the other word for desires is craving or craves. And as I explained in the first gathering, for those of you, specifically women who have been pregnant and who have delivered and had children or just been pregnant in general, and you remember those cravings, right? It was like, I want it and I want it now. There's no substitute. And sometimes you would try to substitute, like, well, I just don't really, and you get it and you're like, I don't even know why I got this. I said I knew I didn't want that. I wanted this. And so for me, a craving wasn't like weird food. A craving for me was like, babe, I need Jim's steak hoagie at 12:30 at night. That was my cravings. Like it was like weird times and weird things that I wanted to eat. And it weren't weird, but specific things that I wanted, and I wanted it when I wanted it, and I didn't want nothing else. When we look at this and it says, don't they come from your desires that battle within? What fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the desires or the cravings that battle within? What this is saying is that it's not coming from anywhere else but within you. You ever watch kids get into an argument or a fight and you say, who started it? And they go, she did. Right? They don't want to take credit for it. It's like, I didn't do it. Well, this is basically saying, like, actually, you started it. The fights and the quarrels, the warring that's going on inside of you, the feelings, the uneasiness, the tension, the stuff that's going on, it's a war of the wants. You're fighting against what you want versus what you don't want, what you think you want, what you might want, what looks good that you want. It looks appealing. It's appealing to your appetite and your desires, right? And so you've got this desire and this craving, but it's not being fulfilled because it's in you. It's not anybody else. And so many times what ends up happening is where it says, go to verse 2. You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. So basically, the fighting comes from you not being able to get what you want. You ever get frustrated when you can't get your way, or you ever see a kid who can't get their way and they have a temper tantrum? That's kind of like a quarrel and a fight on the inside. They're frustrated. You're frustrated because you can't get what you need from what you think you need it from. And so now inside of you, you're trying to figure out, well, if this is not what I need, then what exactly do I need? Thus the question, what do you want? And it says you covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have what you want because you do not ask God. And so many of you, you got this stuff and you didn't even have conversation with God about it. And you're mad at God, or you're mad because you're in a situation that God never ordained or authorized for you to be in because you never connected or asked him. And so in a situation like that, what ends up happening is it's like, well, you do not ask God. And it's like, well, no, because I knew he was going to say no anyway. It's like, well, but that's why you in the mess you in, boo. I mean, let's be real about it. Let's have real talk. Like we want to get upset and angry and we want to have I mean, I know for me, like I get myself in some stuff and I be like, so you just going to see me here? You going to let me just sit in this like this? And he be like, well, you did get yourself in it, didn't you? Yeah, but you're supposed to be helping me, ain't you? You didn't ask me for help before you started. I'm just saying, like, that's how we talk. I don't know about you. And so then I roll my eyes and I'm like, okay, Lord, well, what do I got to do now? I mean, we have those conversations, like, and I think we have to be realistic about the fact that some of the stuff that we get ourselves into because of what we want, now we want him to get out of it because it's not what we wanted. What we wanted now is not what we wanted later, but now we want God to get out of it later, but when we got into it then, we didn't talk to him. So then it says, let me just make sure I got a couple minutes and I want to get y'all this good stuff here. So then it says in verse 3, when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. And so then it's saying, you ask, but you're asking with wrong motives. You're asking badly. You're not asking, you're asking for your own pleasure, your own benefit. It's not necessarily it's kind of like, okay, God, can you just give this to me for my own benefit? That you would spend what you get on your pleasures. That you would spend, and it says in the NLV version, which I love, it says you want these things only to please yourselves. We talk about that perpetual pleasure, the selfishness, those desires. You only want it to please your flesh. You only want it because it's beneficial to you. And so, of course, you ask, he says, well, I talked to God about it. I did. You did, but why did you talk to? Well, because, I figured, But you ask with wrong motives that you may spend what you get on your pleasures, or because your reasons for asking are wrong and you want these things only to please yourself. And what's interesting here is that's why this is called it's not called how to get what you want, it's how to get what you really want. Because at the end of the day, some of you don't really know what you want. It's kind of like if I ask you, what do you want? You're like, oh, I just want to be happy. Well, what exactly does that mean? I'm not sure. I got to think about it. Right? Well, what do you want? I just want $1 million. I want to hit that big lotto, that 800 million. Well, what are you going to do with it when you get it? Well, I'll tell you when I win. Right? And so for some of us, we won't win it because we'll go through it quicker than we got it. Which is sad to say. That there's some things that God doesn't allow, and so it's crazy because what we want, what we really want, lurks in a realm we rarely explore. And so it's kind of like lurking in the shadows of what we want is what we value. And so that takes it a little bit deeper, because then I'm asking you, what's important to you? What's of value to you? Not necessarily what you want, but what's of value to you? What's important to you? And the interesting thing is I love that we had this conversation with Sarah today, because many of us are in a situation where we've been in certain things that have caused us to devalue ourselves. And it's such a blessing to be in a space where we can partner with her and help her to help those girls understand, whether it's at the little bitty bitties or even those who are in high school, that where you are is not where you have to stay. That your value is not in human trafficking. That your value is not in selling yourself or selling yourself out or giving yourself away. Your value is not in that. And so for some of us, over these next 4 weeks that we're going to have this conversation, and Pastor Breck is going to pick this back up next week, is that we've been doing deep diving since we did Kill the Spider. And so we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to continue what we're doing here, because it's not just enough for me or Pastor Breck or whoever comes up here to share a message to you. The point is for you to take the message and live it. The point is to take the message and do the work. The point is to take the message and apply it to your life. Not to take the message and say, ooh, that Detra, she spoke a good word today. You should have been there. Well, you were there. What did you take from it? Too many times we get to a place where we want somebody else to come, and sometimes it's not about them, it's about you. This message is for you. How can you get what you need so that you can be who you need to them, so that you can impart what you're learning here and not just shove it off? Well, you should come to church. Well, what are you learning at church? Well, and so at the end of the day, you'll never get what you really want until you discover what you really value. You will never get what you really want until you discover what you really value. And we have to understand that what we really value, and I know some of y'all are going to kick me in the big toe, but it's not, your value is not in the Buffalo Bills. Y'all are quiet on that. Your value and your worth is not in whether or not they win this game. Where you spend eternity is not contingent upon what happens at today's game. And the light that you shine in this world is not contingent upon whether they win this game. And so at the end of the day, if we can give God 25 minutes of our time or an hour of our time or whatever the case may be, let us make sure that the Bills never outshine the light that God has shown in us. Y'all can clap. And so as I close and I pray, let's be real. We're excited about the Bills. We want the Bills to win. Some of y'all been fasting all week for the Bills. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't fasting for nobody, but you fasting for the Bills. God, Father, ooh, Lord, let them win. I'm putting myself on the altar for them, God. But at the end of the day, let's understand that you'll never get what you really want until you discover what you really value. And what we value, although we love the Bills, we don't value them. We value ourselves. We value God. We value the relationship. We value what he does in our lives and what he's done for us. And so we're going to pray, but I want you to, we're going to put some questions on our website, and we're going to put some questions on Facebook. And I want you to dive in, whether it's individually or collectively. And I want you to do the work and really start asking God, God, what is it that I really want that you want for me?